Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you are not dangling from a gibbet for theft, nor shivering through a plague winter. No, your destiny is far more noble and infinitely more degrading. You are a squire in medieval Europe, a half-grown servant stuffed into livery, your hands chapped from polishing another man's armour, your nights spent on straw that smells faintly of horse piss. You are promised chivalry, but discover only drudgery. Your ears ring with sermons about honour, yet most of your time is spent carrying boots, buckets, and bruises. You are told this is the first step on the road to knighthood. It feels more like the last step on the road to servitude. Before we begin this slow march through mud, hunger, humiliation, and the faint hope of recognition that never arrives, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you listen to these in bed, consider using a pair of wireless sleep earbuds for enhanced immersion. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed for side sleepers. I've linked my favourite pair in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You do not choose this path, your family chooses it for you, because choice is a luxury none of you can afford. A household like yours cannot keep every child fed, and the prospect of sending one son into service promises both relief and opportunity. You are not asked what you think of the arrangement. The decision is spoken over your head, and before you understand what it means, you are being led away from the only hearth you have ever known. The explanation is simple enough. You will be a squire, and in time perhaps a knight, and your service will bring honour. Yet the truth is plainer. You are one mouth fewer to feed at home, and one more body offered to the world of lords, where your labour may be useful. You do not walk alone. A trusted retainer brings you, but their presence is little comfort. They keep their silence for most of the road, as though words would only make the parting sharper. You clutch a small bundle that holds what little is yours. A tunic, a shift, a pair of stockings too thin for travel, perhaps a keepsake pressed into your palm before you left. The road stretches long, each mile marked not by scenery, but by the growing ache in your legs. Villages pass by, unfamiliar faces glancing at you with indifference, and the air feels heavier the further you go from home. By the time the castle rises on the horizon, its walls blotting out the sky, your heart has sunk so far into your stomach that it feels as though you have already been swallowed whole. The castle is nothing like the stories. It does not gleam with banners and trumpets, but looms cold and grey, its walls streaked with soot, its gatehouse yawning like the mouth of a cave. Smoke drifts from chimneys in lazy, choking trails, carrying the smell of burning oak and unwashed bodies. Your companion speaks briefly to a guard or a steward, and then it is done. There are no embraces, no promises of return. The one who brought you here turns away, leaving you to stand small and uncertain before doors that could close behind you forever. That is how your new life begins, not with fanfare, but with absence. A steward takes you by the arm and leads you across the courtyard. The ground is uneven, rutted with cart tracks, and your shoes slip in the damp earth. Chickens scatter at your passing, their feathers drifting across mud, while the clanging of a distant smithy fills the air with an iron tang. The steward does not ask your name. He asks only whose child you are, and when you answer, he nods as though that alone is enough. Your identity, you discover, is not your own. It belongs to your family, to your lord, to your new master. You are simply an extension of someone else's obligation. You are shown to a corner of a chamber that is neither welcoming nor private. A straw mattress, flat and prickling, rests against the cold wall. The smell of it is sharp, mingling with the must of damp stone and the faint odour of mice. This is your bed now. You set down your bundle and sit, the straw crunching under your weight and realise with a sick heaviness that this corner will see more of you than your own mother will ever again. Around you, other boys glance briefly before returning to their own tasks. You are one more shadow in a household already filled with them. Night falls quickly. The rafters creak with sounds you do not know, and the draught sneaks through the cracks of shuttered windows, tugging the blanket from your shoulders. The blanket itself is riddled with holes, offering little warmth against the stone's chill. You curl into yourself and try to summon the comfort of home, but memory is cruel. The absence of your family is louder than the snores of the boys around you. You press your face into the straw, fighting tears, because tears do not soften stone. They only make it colder. Morning brings no reprieve. You're shaken awake before the sky has even brightened, dragged into a rhythm that does not wait for you to adjust. The air is damp, the stone floor freezing against your bare feet, and the sounds of the castle are already alive. The bark of orders, the clatter of buckets, the groan of doors on iron hinges. You follow because you must. Your hunger gnaws already, but food does not come at once. When you finally sit at the long board with the other servants, you wait as they eat before you. What remains is crusts and thin broth, a mess of scraps that tastes more of smoke than bread. Still you eat, because not eating means nothing at all. Hunger will be your companion, and you begin to learn its language. Training follows close behind. A wooden sword is thrust into your hand, its weight far too much for your small grip, and you're told to hold it steady. Your arms burn, your knuckles sting as older boys strike at you without pity. Each blow lands with a sharp crack, and you bite the inside of your cheek to keep from crying out. Pain is not something to be soothed here. It is something to be endured. They tell you this is the path to greatness, that every night began the same way, but you do not feel greatness in the bruises blooming along your arms. You feel only exhaustion and the knowledge that you must rise again when ordered, no matter how much your body protests. The castle itself becomes your cage. Its halls echo with the clatter of dishes, the bark of commands, the crackle of fires that smoke more than they warm. Your eyes burn from the haze and your throat tastes of soot. Drafts whisper through corridors, tugging at your sleeves, and the cold follows you like a shadow. Every sound is louder here. Boots on stone, iron doors slamming, men's laughter booming in the hall. You do not add to the noise. You are not meant to be heard. Silence becomes your armor, even as your body longs for the softness of words, not shaped as orders. Play is gone. Where other children chase each other in fields, you're sent running drills across courtyards until your legs buckle, or climbing ladders until your hands blister. If you laugh, it is nervous, the thin kind of laughter that dies quickly under stern eyes. Nobles' sons recite Latin verses in warm chambers, while their voices echo with promise. You hold wooden swords until your arms collapse, while the voices you hear echo only with commands. Childhood does not belong to you anymore. It belongs to memory, and memory grows dimmer with each passing day. Homesickness lingers like a wound that refuses to close. The smell of bread baking can tear it open in an instant, reminding you of meals that felt fuller, warmer, more yours. The sight of a family passing through the gates stings sharper than any blow, their children clutching tightly at their mother's skirts. At night, it presses hardest when you lie awake in the dark, the cold stone pressing against your back and the straw scratching at your skin. You think of voices that no longer call to you, of faces that grow harder to picture each night. Yet longing becomes dangerous. The more you indulge it, the more unbearable it feels. You force yourself to bury it, though burying it makes you feel less yourself each day. What you gain in return is not identity, but erasure. You wear the crest of your lord now, stitched into your clothing, stamped onto the shields you polish. No one calls you by name. You are boy, lad, squire. The less you speak, the less you exist. Safety lies in invisibility, and invisibility becomes habit. To succeed is to vanish behind the knight you serve. To fail is to invite blows, humiliation, dismissal. You learn quickly that life is not about glory. It is about surviving unnoticed. The hurts of the body are simpler than the hurts of the heart. Bruises fade, cuts heal. Hunger dulls with time. But the silence where your family once was, the hollow space where play and laughter should be, those do not mend. They stretch inside you, hollowing you out until you no longer recognize what you were. You try not to think of what has been lost. The more you think, the worse it becomes. Better to keep your eyes on the stone in front of you, your hands on the work before you, your head bowed when orders are barked. Rescue never comes. No one calls you back. No one eases your burden because you're small, or young, or lonely. The world here does not bend to softness. It expects you to bend instead, and you do. You swallow your anger, your sorrow, your longing, because none of it will feed you or save you. Promises of knighthood and honour hang in the air like distant stars, but you know you will likely never touch them. What is real is the taste of smoke in your food, the smell of sweat and straw in your bed, the sting of wood against your arms, the ache of hunger gnawing as you drift to sleep. Childhood ends not in a moment of ceremony, but in the slow erosion of everything that makes you a child. Play, laughter, family, each stripped away until only obedience remains. You do not belong to yourself, nor to those who raised you. You belong to the Lord whose crest you wear, to the knight whose boots you polish, to the castle whose walls now hold you. You are not a son anymore, not truly a boy. You are property in training. You are a squire. Time in the castle does not ease the weight of your service, it only sharpens it. The older you grow, the more responsibilities are set on your shoulders, as though age alone transforms you from a frightened boy into useful servant. You are told this is an honour, that to serve a knight is to brush shoulders with greatness, but the tasks you're given are not stitched from poetry or legend. They are ordinary, endless, and humiliating. Your life becomes a list of chores, performed not for your own survival, but for another man's comfort. And every day, you're reminded that service means putting his body, his armour, his horse, and even his waist above yourself. The word squire may sound noble when sung in verse, but in practice, it is little more than errand boy with bruises. Armour is your first and most constant enemy. Iron and steel have no respect for your hands. The knight's mail arrives to you clotted with rust and sweat, a heavy shirt of rings that has soaked in every battle, every tournament, every hour of labour he has sweated through. Your job is to make it shine again, no matter how long it takes. You rub with sand, with vinegar, with rags that shred beneath your fingers. Hours pass in the rasp of metal against cloth until your skin splits and your nails blacken. When the knight dons the mail, he expects it to gleam as though no man has ever bled or sweated inside it. If there is a stain left, if a patch of dullness shows beneath the torchlight, it is your failure, and you pay for it in cuffs and curses. Polishing boots follows the same law of diminishing dignity. Leather, stiffened by mud and manure, is handed to you with the casual expectation that you will make it supple again. You scrape away the clumps of filth, rub in tallow until your fingers shine with grease, then buff with scraps of cloth until the surface reflects the light. The smell of lard grows so familiar that it becomes part of you, a constant reminder that your hands exist to make other men's feet more comfortable. When he strides across the hall in spotless boots, he earns approving glances. No one looks down to see the boy who scrubbed until his wrists ached. The boots are praised, but the hands that polished them are ignored. Fetching water is a task so constant, it becomes muscle memory. You know the weight of the buckets better than you know the weight of your own limbs. From well to hall, from hall to kitchen, you move with sloshing burdens that leave your shoulders raw. In winter, the water freezes against your hands, searing cold that makes your skin crack and bleed. In summer, the buckets sweat and drip down your legs, soaking your hose until the cloth sticks damp to your skin. No one thanks you for the water. They only complain if it arrives too late, or too warm, or too cold. You learn to carry it silently, the rhythm of your steps dictated by the slosh of liquid that matters more to others than your own bones. Meals are no kinder. You fetch, carry, slice, and serve, all while standing on your feet until they throb. The knight eats first always. Nobles at his table share platters heavy with meat and wine, their hands greasy with privilege, their laughter booming loud enough to rattle the rafters. You stand behind him, ready to refill his goblet or carve more venison at his command. Your own food comes later, much later, from what is left behind. Cold scraps of bread, gnawed bones, greasy broth with floating crumbs of fat. This is your feast. You eat standing quickly in the corners, where no one sees you, because service waits and does not pause for your hunger. The taste of grease and smoke lingers on your tongue long after the meal, a bitter reminder that you live on what others discard. The stables add another layer of servitude, one that sticks to your clothes and hair so thickly that it announces you before you arrive. Horses do not clean themselves, and knights do not touch muck unless it is under their boots. You wade into stalls ankle deep in manure, shovel in hand, while the animals snort and stamp around you. The smell is overwhelming, a mix of urine and straw and rot. And no matter how much you scrape it from the floor, it clings to you. Your tunic soaks with the stench, your hair takes it in, and your hands carry it back to the hall, no matter how often you scrub. You groom the animals too, brushing mud from their coats, oiling their tack until the leather softens, checking hooves for stones. These beasts are worth more than you, and the care you give them is proof enough. They eat oats finer than your bread, sleep warmer than you, and are guarded more closely in war than any squire could hope to be. Even the most intimate humiliations fall to you. Chamber pots do not empty themselves, and a knight does not lower his dignity by carrying his own waste. That duty falls squarely on your shoulders, a task wrapped in the language of necessity, but heavy with degradation. You hold the reeking vessel at arm's length, your stomach churning with the smell, and carry it to be dumped and scrubbed. It is called service, but in truth it is servitude laid bare. They say it builds humility, that learning to perform such tasks prepares you for greater discipline. What you learn instead is that honour smells exactly like stale urine. You imagine the poets who sing of noble squires, and you wonder if they ever mentioned this particular form of apprenticeship. Somehow, you doubt it. The days blur together, a cycle of sweat and grime repeated until you lose track of time. Morning begins with fetching, midday with scrubbing, evening with polishing, night with sweeping. There is no end, only rotation. Your hands are raw, your back aches, your clothes stink of grease and manure. The smell of rust clings to you so persistently that it seems to seep from your pores, a metallic tang that follows you everywhere. You fall into bed at night, not with the relief of rest, but with the dull knowledge that tomorrow will bring the same. The straw beneath you scratches at your skin, and the cold stone against your side reminds you that nothing in this life softens. Little by little, your body adjusts. Muscles grow where there were none. Blisters harden into calluses. The sting of cuts becomes another kind of silence. What does not ease is the knowledge that all of this labour is invisible. When the knight strides into the hall, gleaming in spotless armour, the people cheer him. They see honour, valour, chivalry. They do not see your hands bleeding from hours of scrubbing, or smell the lard still clinging to your skin. When his horse prances into the lists, brushed to a sheen, the crowd marvels at its power. No one notices the boy who shoveled its dung. Glory belongs always to the man who commands, never to the one who serves. It would be easier if the work built towards something visible, if each chore felt like a step toward a distant reward. Instead, each task vanishes as soon as it is done, replaced by another. You clean armour today only for it to rust again tomorrow. You polish boots only for them to be caked in mud by evening. You carry water only for it to be spilled, meals only to be consumed, stables only to be soiled again. Nothing you do endures. The cycle is endless, and you're caught within it, a wheel that grinds you down, but never turns forward. As the weeks fold into months, you come to smell more like the stables than the nights you serve. Sweat, rust, manure, and grease cling to you so thoroughly that they feel like a second skin. No amount of washing erases them. You are told that this is the honourable labour of a squire, the necessary foundation of a noble life, but honour tastes of smoke and lard and leaves you coughing. The truth is simpler. You are not living the glamorous life of a knight's right-hand man. You are a servant, and the cycle of your days has reduced you into something less like a boy and more like a tool, shaped by use and dulled by repetition. And though others may call it training for greatness, you understand what it truly is. Endless chores that strip you down until you are nothing more than labour clothed in flesh. The chores never end, but alongside them comes another layer of labour. The lessons you're told will shape you into a knight. The word is spoken often, as if repeating it enough will make you believe you are walking toward honour rather than trudging through manure. You are assured that this is not mere servitude, that while your hands polish boots and your shoulders haul water, your heart and spirit are being trained in loftier things. Chivalry, they call it. Honour, loyalty, courage, noble words embroidered in tapestries and chanted in prayers, whispered by priests as though they contained some divine spark. You are told that these virtues are yours to absorb, if only you will watch, obey, and endure. Yet what you encounter when you're ushered into training yards and shadowed corners of the castle is not honour, nor courage, nor loyalty, but obedience drilled into your body with the flat of a blade. Training takes place in courtyards paved with uneven stones that scrape your knees, or in draughty halls where echoes make every blow ring louder than it should. You stand opposite older squires, boys who are further along the same miserable path, and sometimes even opposite knights themselves, who take perverse pleasure in demonstrating their strength. You are handed a wooden sword, heavy and splintering, and told to hold it steady. The first time it slips from your grip, the flat of another sword crashes into your shoulder, sending pain shooting down your arm. You pick it up again, because leaving it where it fell would invite worse. The lesson is not how to fight, but how to withstand. No one asks if your arm is broken. They ask why you are not standing faster. The rhetoric of courage is laced through every exercise, but the practice is simpler. You are taught how to fall without shattering yourself on stone, how to roll so that bones absorb less of the impact, how to rise even when your ribs ache and your vision blurs. Pain is presented as a kind of tutor, its lessons etched into bruises and welts. Older squires strike you with no warning, laughing when you stagger, assuring you it is for your own good. Knights, when they condescend to demonstrate, do so with the impatience of men who forget what it is to be small and unsteady. The flat of their blades leaves lines across your back and arms, the memory of each blow lingering long after the sting fades. This is not valour. It is endurance. Silence becomes the chief commandment. You may yelp when struck, but you're expected to smother the sound as quickly as it rises. Whimpering is mocked, tears punished with more blows. A squire who can stand quietly, who can swallow pain until it festers inside, is praised as disciplined. A squire who flinches is scorned, treated as weak, as though courage is measured not by facing danger, but by how well you hide its effects. You learn to grit your teeth until your jaw aches, to breathe shallowly when a strike knocks the wind from your chest, to rise slowly, but without complaint. The bruises on your skin become a ledger of your obedience, each one proof that you suffer correctly. There are lessons in horsemanship too, but even here, the language of chivalry disguises the reality. Knights speak of the sacred bond between man and steed, but what you experience is more often being thrown into the dirt and told to climb back on before the horse notices you're afraid. Loyalty, they call it, as though loyalty is earned by being kicked in the ribs and scrambling to your feet again. The horses learn your scent, your voice, the way you approach, but they do not love you. They tolerate you as beasts tolerate flies. The true bond belongs to the knight who rides them, the one who claims the glory when the horse prances in the lists or charges in war. You are merely the boy who brushes their coats and gets trampled when they spook. Obedience threads through everything. You kneel when told, you bow when ordered, you run at the bark of a name that may not even be yours. Commands come sharp and constant, filling the air like the clang of bells. Sometimes they contradict each other, one knight shouting one order, another shouting its opposite, and you are struck whichever choice you make. The lesson is not to discern truth or justice, but to submit without question. They call it loyalty, but it feels more like erasure. Your thoughts do not matter. Your instincts do not matter. Your sense of fairness has no place here. Only obedience keeps you alive, and obedience strips you thinner every day. There are moments when they dress the lessons in finery. You maybe read passages about honour, about knights who rescue maidens or uphold justice. The words hang in the air like incense, beautiful but insubstantial. Then immediately after, you're told to hold your arms outstretched with a sword until your muscles scream, or to kneel in the mud as punishment for hesitation. The gap between sermon and practice is so wide it swallows you whole. What you learn is not that knights live by golden codes, but that codes are for display, while reality is built on suffering. Chivalry is something recited to priests and poets. What you are learning is how to endure humiliation without breaking. The training yard smells of sweat and iron, its stones stain darker where blood has soaked in. The air carries the sharp scent of vinegar, used to clean wounds, mixed with the heavy stink of bodies pressed too close in combat drills. Wooden swords crack against shields with dull thuds, and the sound of boys groaning or gasping punctuates the rhythm. Your own body becomes part of this chorus, though you strive to make your noises quieter than theirs. The ground beneath you is always hard, the air always cold, the lessons always brutal. Days spent in the stable at least end with a horse that gleams under your brush. Days spent in training end only with new bruises to catalogue. Older squires delight in passing their misery down. They strike harder than necessary, cuff you when no knight is watching, shove you into walls with muttered justifications that you will be grateful later. You're told this hardens you, prepares you for the realities of war. In truth, it only teaches cruelty, a cycle that ensures each new boy is made to feel the same helplessness. You swear you will never become like them, but you wonder how much of your swearing will hold once years of this grind you down. Perhaps one day you too will swing too hard, laugh too loud when a smaller boy falls. Perhaps endurance curdles into cruelty if endured long enough. The priests speak of humility, and this lesson you do learn, though not in the way they intend. You bow your head when struck, you lower your eyes when scolded, you kneel in mud until your legs cramp, and you stand again when ordered. Humility is not a choice but a condition forced upon you. Whatever pride you may have carried from your family is knocked out of you one blow at a time. You learn that pride has no place here, that pride is punished more swiftly than ignorance. The only thing allowed to grow is silence. At night, lying on your bed of straw, you trace the outlines of your bruises like a map of your education. Each mark is a lesson. This one teaches you to roll when falling. That one reminds you to keep your guard higher. The long bruise along your ribs says you must rise faster, no matter how much it hurts. Pain writes your curriculum, and you memorize it with every inch of your body. The language of chivalry may be spoken in the hall, embroidered on banners, praised in song, but the language written into your flesh says something else entirely. It says that silence is safer than protest, that endurance is worth more than courage, and that obedience is the only virtue truly rewarded. You begin to understand that the virtues they extol are illusions. Honour is a word used to make cruelty sound noble. Loyalty is obedience disguised as choice. Courage is nothing more than swallowing fear without letting it show. Chivalry, as they define it, is not about justice or mercy or fairness. It is about how long you can kneel in the mud without collapsing. It is about how many blows you can take before your body gives out. It is about bowing your head day after day until the gesture becomes permanent. And so you learn, not the shining ideals promised when you were handed over to this life, but the truths beaten into your skin. You learn that obedience is more important than bravery, that silence is more valuable than words, that humiliation is a constant companion. You learn to endure without recognition, to suffer without reward, to stand without thanks. Chivalry, you come to see, is not golden at all. It is the dull colour of bruises, the dark stain of mud, the bowed posture of a boy who understands that survival is not found in honour, but in swallowing every indignity placed before him. Training and chores fill most of your hours, but even when you're not swinging wooden swords or hauling buckets, you're rarely idle. The castle has ways of consuming every scrap of time you have. When you're not polishing or being beaten, you're expected to drift on the edges of daily life, a shadow whose presence is required, but whose voice is not. You are there to make yourself useful in small, invisible ways, always at hand when needed, never noticeable when not. The great hall is the heart of the castle, a space that roars with sound and smells of smoke, but you do not walk through it as a guest. You linger at its margins, standing still until your legs stiffen, eyes lowered until your neck aches, waiting for the next command. Meals in the hall are a display of wealth and status. The long tables groan under trenchers of roasted meat, basins of thick stews, loaves of fresh bread, and pitchers of wine that flow as easily as water. The laughter of lords and ladies rises in waves, clattering against the vaulted ceiling, as though mirth itself is another luxury to be displayed. You are part of this world, but only in the way a candle is part of a feast, necessary for light, but never noticed unless it goes out. You serve food, carry dishes, refill goblets, and stand behind chairs waiting for the smallest flick of a hand. You do not sit, you do not eat, not until much later when scraps are passed to the side tables where servants gather, eating quickly and quietly, as though any sound might remind the hall that you exist. By then the bread is cold, the meat chewed bare, the broth greasy and thin. It does not matter. You swallow whatever remains, because hunger does not care for dignity. You sleep where space allows. Sometimes it is in a corner of the barracks, sometimes near the stables, sometimes on a bench if no one else claims it first. Straw mats are a luxury, and when you do have one, it is thin and uneven, stuffed with stalks that poke through the fabric to scratch your skin. The stone beneath you is cold no matter how tightly you curl under your blanket. The sound of others snoring, muttering, or shifting in their sleep fills the darkness, leaving little room for peace. You learn to fall asleep quickly, because if you do not, exhaustion will crush you the next day. Rest is never true rest, only pauses between commands. Banquets are the worst. They dazzle with colour, noise and music, the air thick with the smell of roasted boar, spiced wine and sweating bodies. The hall glitters with torches, tapestries hang heavy on the walls, musicians play lutes and pipes in the gallery above. The nobles recline in comfort, their laughter spilling like wine, while you dart through the press of servants, balancing trays, carrying jugs, bowing and sidestepping to avoid the drunken hands that sometimes reach out to pinch or cuff you. You're close enough to hear every word of gossip and intrigue, but never close enough to matter. You learn the rhythms of politics without ever being permitted to join them. Lords whisper of alliances and betrayals while you refill their cups. Ladies plot marriages while you adjust the tablecloth. And the only thing expected of you is silence. To overhear is not to participate. You are the walls of the hall, present but voiceless. The daily routines of the castle remind you that hierarchy is stitched into every stone. You carry messages between chambers, but the words are never for you. You run errands into the kitchens, where cooks snap and curse, the air heavy with smoke, steam, and the sour tang of spilled ale. You stand in the chapel as your knight prays, the echo of chants filling your ears. Though no priest looks at you as if you have a soul worth blessing, you sweep ashes from the hearths, wipe tables after meals, scrub floors slick with grease. Every task reminds you that you're neither guest nor master, but something in between. Visible enough to labour, invisible enough to be forgotten. What you witness of the nobility is rarely flattering. They speak of chivalry as if it is a coin they alone can spend, yet their lives are thick with petty squabbles, jealousies, and vanities. You watch men who lecture on courage grow red-faced with rage when their wine is late. You see women who speak of virtue sneer at servants who spill broth. You hear knights boast of loyalty while whispering treachery behind each other's backs. You are not meant to notice these contradictions, but they play out before you every day, and your silence is the only reason you're allowed to continue watching. If you dared to repeat what you heard, you would be punished swiftly because the truth is less valuable than appearances. Sometimes you're sent to watch the doors of chambers where decisions are made, though you're never invited inside. The murmurs that leak through thick wood are meaningless to you at first, scraps of names and places you do not recognize. Over time, you piece together fragments, understanding enough to see the outlines of power. Yet no matter how much you overhear, you cannot shape a single word of it. Knowledge weighs on you like a stone you're not allowed to drop. You're trusted to be present without being part of what happens. You learn that being invisible is sometimes more dangerous than being seen, because you carry secrets you cannot speak, and silence becomes another burden to bear. The smell of the great hall clings to you even when you leave it. Smoke from torches soaks into your hair and tunic, mingling with the grease of roasted meat and the sour tang of wine spilled on the floor. Your hands ache from carrying dishes, your back from standing motionless for hours. Sometimes you feel you are dissolving into the air itself, a figure without weight or substance. People glance past you as though you're part of the furniture. You're expected to see without looking, to hear without listening, to exist without leaving a trace. Your presence is demanded and yet constantly denied, a contradiction that gnaws at you as surely as hunger. What humour you find is bitter. When a knight slams his goblet on the table and calls for more wine, you think how noble it must feel to command endless drink while someone else runs on tired legs to fetch it. When you carry trenchers heaped with meat to tables groaning under the weight of food, you wonder how much honour there is in feeding men who can barely see their own toes beneath their bellies. When you scrub the grease from the floor after a feast, you tell yourself you're polishing the very ground where history's made. Such jokes are not meant to be funny, only survivable. They are a way of holding your mind still while your body performs what is demanded of it. In rare moments of stillness, you stand against the wall and watch the swirl of life around you. Nobles argue, laugh, and scheme, their words rising and falling like tides. Minstrels sing, their voices trembling with forced cheer. The air is thick with the heat of bodies, the smell of sweat sharp beneath the perfume of spiced dishes. You feel the ache in your feet, the rawness in your throat from shouting orders to kitchen boys, the dull hum in your head from standing too long without food. You know you are here, but you're not part of any of it. You are the shadow on the edge of the firelight, flickering but insubstantial, present only because absence would be noticed. At night, when the hall grows quiet, you retreat to your corner, to the same bed of straw that scratches your skin and fills your nose with the sharp, earthy scent of dried grass and dust. You curl under your thin blanket, still smelling of smoke and grease, the noise of the hall echoing in your ears, long after the voices have gone. Life in the castle is predictable in its tedium, but everything changes when a tournament is announced. Word spreads quickly, carried on the lips of messengers and echoed in the corridors until it seems the walls themselves hum with anticipation. To the nobility, a tournament is an occasion of spectacle, of honour proved and fortunes won. To the townsfolk who gather, it is a festival of excitement, a brief escape from their lives of labour. To your knight, it is an opportunity to preen before peers and patrons, to display strength and skill beneath fluttering banners. But for you, a squire, the announcement does not bring delight or glory. It brings only longer hours, more bruises and exhaustion that sinks so deep into your bones that sleep becomes no more than a shallow pause before the next demand. Your knight's preparation begins with armour, and therefore so does yours. What he wears into the lists must gleam, not merely serve. You drag the heavy hauberk of mail into the light and set to work. You rub every ring raw, your hands bleeding before the first sleeve is finished. Gauntlets, gorget, greaves, each is a task in itself, stained by sweat, dulled by rust, thick with the memory of battles past. You scrape and polish until your shoulders throb and your fingers bleed, until the stench of metal clings to you like a second skin. The knight will step into the field, looking as though sunlight itself has been hammered into steel. The horse too demands endless labour. It must be brushed until its coat gleams, its mane combed, its tack oiled and supple. You scrape mud from its hooves, check for stones that might cause a limp, and shovel out the filth of its stall until your nose is filled with the ammonia stink of urine and manure. The animal, pampered and prized, receives finer oats than you receive bread. You curry its flank while your stomach grumbles, and you rub ointments into its muscles, though none are spared for your own. When the crowd roars at its prancing in the lists, they will call it a magnificent steed bred for glory, but they will not know the boy who spent his nights knee-deep in dung to make it shine. Cloth too needs mending, because tournament garb is meant to flatter as much as armour is meant to protect. Torn banners, frayed surcoats, ripped saddlecloths, all arrive in your hands to be stitched by firelight. You prick your fingers more often than you thread them, the cloth rough against your skin, the wax thread stiff and unyielding. Your eyes strain in the dim glow, and by morning the needle leaves your fingertips swollen and sore. Yet the knight must ride into the lists with colours blazing, his crest bright against the sun, as though poverty or wear could never touch him. The finery is his, but the labour is yours, sewn stitch by stitch into fabric that will never bear your name. And then there is the knight himself, who must be prepared as carefully as his horse or armour. You rub salves into his bruises, lace bandages around his wrists, and listen without answer to his curses and complaints. His body is the weapon that must not fail, and you are expected to tend to it as dutifully as you tend to steal. When he staggers back from a joust with a shoulder half dislocated, it is your hands that tug it back into place. When he bleeds from a cut across his brow, it is your cloth that stanches it. When he collapses on the ground after being unhorsed, it is you who drag his weight into the shade, your arms burning as the crowd gasps and cheers. They call his courage unmatched, his strength unbreakable. They never see the squire crouched beside him, wiping blood from his face and forcing water between his lips. Tournaments are meant to entertain, and they do, for everyone but you. The crowd roars when lances splinter, when swords clash, when men crash to the earth in a tangle of armour and dust. Ladies gasp behind their veils, lords bellow wagers, minstrels sing of gallantry. You stand at the edge of the lists, invisible in plain sight, heart pounding, not with excitement but with dread. If your knight falls too hard, it is your back that must bear him away. If his armour buckles, it is your fingers that must wrench it free before it suffocates him. If his horse bolts, it is you who must chase it down. Glory is for those in the saddle. Fear belongs to those in the shadows beside the rail. When he is victorious, the applause swells, thunder rolling through the stands. He raises his visor, salutes with his lance, bows to the noble dais. You stand behind him, holding his spare sword, drenched in sweat from running to fetch whatever he needed. No one claps for you. When he loses, when he is thrown into the dirt and trampled half senseless, the jeers echo, but they are not yours to endure either. Instead, you drag him to the sidelines, wipe mud from his face, stitch tears in his tunic, and shove him back into the fray as though nothing has happened. The crowd marvels at his resilience, never guessing it is your hands that patched him together. The lists themselves are chaos, and you're caught in the middle of it. Men bellowing, horses screaming, steel shrieking against steel. The noise is deafening, a wall of sound that drowns your own thoughts. Dust rises in choking clouds, stinging your eyes, coating your tongue with grit. The air reeks of sweat, blood and churned earth, heavy enough to make you gag. You do not fight, but you do not escape either. Blows land dangerously close, lances shatter into splinters that cut your arms, horses rear too near. You are always at risk, yet never accounted among the brave. If you're struck, if you fall, no one notices unless you fail to rise. After the tournament ends, when the trumpets fade and the banners droop, your work is only beginning. The knight returns to his chamber to drink and boast of his victories, or sulk over his defeats, while you drag his armour into the wash and begin the slow, brutal work of cleaning. Blood cakes the mail, sweat has soaked into the padding. Dust and dirt grind into every crevice. You scrub until your arms tremble, soak until your fingers wrinkle, scrape until flakes of rust sting your eyes. The noise of the crowd still echoes in your ears, but now the hall is empty, the torches guttering, the benches bare. Where applause once filled the air, there is only the sound of water splashing against metal and the rasp of your rag against iron. Sometimes you pause, listening to the silence after the storm, and you realise how invisible you truly are. The crowd has already forgotten you, as they forgot you while they cheered. The knight's name will be remembered, perhaps even sung of in verse, while yours vanishes into the air like smoke. His triumphs are made of your labour, his reputation burnished by your sweat, his survival pieced together by your bruised and bleeding hands. Yet when the heralds write the record of the day, they will mention only the knight, never the boy who dragged him from the dirt and scoured his armour until it shone again. As the last echoes of applause fade from the lists, you remain. You stand with sleeves rolled high, scrubbing blood out of chain mail long after the torches dim and the stands lie empty. The night rests, the crowd sleeps, the minstrels sing in the taverns, but you are still bent over steel, water soaking your skin, rag tearing beneath your grip. The field may belong to the knight, but the aftermath belongs to you. After the tournament, life returns to its usual rhythm of chores and silence, but it does not remain that way for long. Word of war spreads through the castle, like smoke through rafters, sudden, thick, and impossible to ignore. Trumpets blare, banners are unfurled, messengers hurry in and out, with wax-sealed letters that smell of melted tallow. The knight you serve grows restless, striding through the hall with his chest puffed and his voice loud, proclaiming loyalty and valour to anyone who will listen. For him, war is a chance to prove himself, to carve his name into the chronicles of his lord, perhaps even into history. For you, it means something far simpler and far heavier. It means more weight on your shoulders, more bruises on your back, more exhaustion in your bones. When war is declared, you march not as a warrior, but as a mule. Preparation for campaign strips away the last remnants of illusion. Armour is packed, tents rolled, wagons loaded. The knight points to what must be carried and does not pause to wonder how it will reach the battlefield. That is your concern. You heft shields heavier than your own chest, drag bundles of lances longer than you are tall, and balance sacks of food across your shoulders until your knees threaten to buckle. You're expected to know where everything is kept, to produce it instantly when asked, and to carry it all without complaint. The knight rides his horse proudly, reins held loose in his hand, his surcoat bright in the sun. You trudge in the mud behind him, sweat soaking through your tunic, dust sticking to your throat, every step reminding you that you exist only to keep him moving forward. The march stretches into monotony, broken only by discomfort. Roads dissolve into churned ruts that fill with rain, forcing you to drag your boots through sucking mud that pulls at each step like grasping fingers. When the sun beats down, sweat pours into your eyes, leaving them stinging and blurred. When it rains, the water seeps through wool and linen until your clothes cling cold and clammy to your skin. There is no pause for weather. The knight has his cloak, his horse, his attendants to shield him from the worst of it. You have nothing but your own body, and your body has no choice but to endure. The load on your back shifts and grinds, leather straps biting into your shoulders until they are rubbed raw. The weight of the knight's possessions presses into you more firmly than any blade. At camp, the work does not ease. While the knight and his companions drink, boast or pray in comfort, you and the other squires bend to the unending labour of making the camp livable. Fires must be built, tents erected, horses fed and watered, supplies sorted, weapons checked. You gather wood until your arms burn, scrape flint until your fingers blister, and coax sparks into reluctant flame in wind that seems determined to snuff them out. You drive stakes into the ground until your palms split, tie ropes until your wrists ache, and shovel mud from the thresholds of tents, only to watch more seep in overnight. Camp is never comfort, it is merely another form of exhaustion. When your knight lies down to sleep, it is on a pallet raised from the ground. When you collapse, it is on dirt or straw, damp and lumpy, the smell of smoke and sweat thick in the air. Food is another burden. Supplies vanish quickly, and the knight eats first, always. You scrounge in the margins, swallowing hard bread that cracks your teeth and broth so thin it tastes more of smoke than meat. Sometimes you raid the countryside, tearing nettles from hedgerows, scraping acorns from the dirt, chasing rabbits that always seem faster than your feet. When you are lucky, the knight tosses you the scraps he does not want, gristle, bones, the rind of cheese gone hard. Hunger is constant, curling in your stomach like a parasite. You learn to work on it, to walk with it, to pretend it is not there, because complaining only earns you blows and nothing to eat. Night in camp is never quiet. Horses stamp and snort. Fires crackle and hiss. Men murmur or snore. There is always someone shouting an order, someone laughing too loud, someone sharpening steel against stone. You sleep lightly, if you sleep at all, because you're expected to wake at a word, to fetch, to carry, to serve. The knight may bark for his armour at midnight, or demand a horse be checked at dawn. You stumble from straw to duty, eyes gritty with fatigue, bones stiff with cold. The ground beneath you is always hard, the air always damp, and rest always incomplete. Your dreams, when you have them, are filled with chores, as though even in sleep you cannot escape. Disease stalks the camp more faithfully than any enemy. The stench of latrines drifts through the air, mingling with the reek of unwashed bodies and damp wool. Men cough in their sleep, hawk and spit through the day, and the sound follows you like a curse. Wounds fester quickly in such filth, turning scratches into sores, bruises into abscesses. You clean your knight's cuts with vinegar, wincing at his curses as the liquid bites, but no one cleans yours. You bind them yourself with scraps of cloth, hoping they will not rot before they heal. Fever spreads faster than rumours, leaving men shivering under blankets one day and carried out to shallow graves the next. You pray only to be overlooked by it, as though invisibility might protect you even from death. Marches continue, one after another, until you lose count of the days. Villages pass in a blur, some burn to cinders, others trembling, as armed men strip their stores of food. You are told it is for the cause, for the honour of your lord, but you see only hungry mouths snatching bread from other hungry mouths. Smoke rises from roofs set alight, the smell of it thick in your throat. You follow because you must, leading horses heavy with plunder, carrying loads that grow no lighter no matter how many times you shift them. Glory is for the knight who rides at the front, his banner snapping in the wind. For you, there is only mud in your boots, ache in your shoulders, and silence in your mouth. The weight of your role presses more heavily the further from home you go. You're expected to know where every item is packed, to produce it before your knight finishes asking. To anticipate needs you cannot possibly predict. If he demands water, you must have it. If he demands a salve, you must know where it lies in the jumble of sacks. If he demands rest, you must provide comfort on ground that holds none. You are always too slow, always too clumsy, always too much in the way, no matter how much you give. Gratitude never comes, only more orders, more demands, more weight. Your body bends beneath it, but still you walk, and because stopping is unthinkable. The air of campaign is thick with noise, smell and weariness. Smoke from 100 fires mingles with the scent of horse dung, sweat and spilled ale. Steel rings against stone as men sharpen weapons. Voices rise and fall in argument. Dogs bark through the night. You move through it like a ghost, present everywhere, acknowledged nowhere. Your clothes stiffen with dried sweat. Your boots crust with mud. Your hair tangles into ropes. You do not remember when you last felt clean. You do not remember what silence sounds like. You only know that each day begins with orders and ends with exhaustion, and in between there is nothing of yourself left. The truth becomes plain as the days stretch into weeks. Knights may dream of banners waving and songs sung in their honour, but you do not. You have no illusions of carving your name into history. Your only hope is to remain standing, to avoid being crushed under weight, to escape fever, hunger, or the slow wasting that takes so many. You sense that survival on campaign is not earned through bravery or strength, but through something smaller and meaner. It is found in slipping quietly past disease, in scavenging enough food to keep upright, in following close enough not to be abandoned and far enough not to be struck. It is not glory that keeps you alive. It is the grim calculation that if you can outlast the hunger, outwalk the mud, and outwait the cruelty, then perhaps you will return. Word spreads that the enemy lies near, and at once the camp shifts from weary trudge to tense anticipation. The night grows louder, striding about with the swagger of a man who believes history is already waiting to remember him. Servants and squires scurry in his wake, fetching, tightening, checking, because the day everyone has been speaking of, with dread and bravado, has finally come. For him, it is the chance to prove his valour. For you, it is the day you become a pair of hands, fastening straps, lifting weight, and bending beneath steel that is not yours. The knight dons armour, but it is not his doing. It is yours. You tighten buckles until your fingers bleed, pull straps until your shoulders ache, and adjust every plate until the knight nods his approval. By the time he raises his visor and declares himself ready, you are already drenched in sweat, though you will never step into the charge. The horse comes next, its flanks quiver with tension, nostrils flaring at the scent of smoke drifting on the morning air. You stroke its muzzle, speak softly into its ear. Though your words are not meant for comfort, but for control, you fit the bit between its teeth, fasten the bridle, sling the saddle, tighten the girth. The knight mounts with practiced ease, the weight of his armour pressing the animal's back, and you steady it when it shifts nervously. Around you the field is a chaos of preparation, banners snapping in the wind, men shouting orders, armour clattering as it is strapped into place, the shrill whinny of frightened horses. It is a pageant of war, but you know it is not the pageantry that matters. It is the mud beneath your boots, the load across your shoulders, the weight of weapons you must carry in case the knight calls for them. When the horns sound, the ground itself seems to shudder. Lines of men surge forward, lances lowered, shields braced, the thunder of hooves shaking the air. You do not ride with them, but you're not safe behind them either. You stand at the edge of the field, leading the knight's spare horse, carrying his extra weapons, watching the world dissolve into dust and noise. Arrows whistle overhead, their sound sharp and merciless, some striking the ground so close you feel the spray of dirt against your face. Stray blows find their way, even to the margins, a sword's flat glancing your shoulder, a shield's edge clipping your jaw. You are not part of the glorious charge, but you are part of the danger all the same. The chaos of battle defies order. Men shout, scream, curse, their words lost in the crash of steel. Horses scream louder, high-pitched and panicked, their eyes rolling white as they rear and bolt. You clutch reins so tightly your palms blister, trying to calm animals that know better than men how near death lurks. The knight gallops into the fray, lance splintering on impact, sword flashing in the sun, and for a moment he is everything the poets promised. But you see the gaps between the verses. You see him stumble when his shield arm tires, hear his grunt when a blade strikes too close. You run forward with water, with another weapon, with hands to pull him upright when he falls. The crowd, if there is one, cheers his resilience. No one sees you dragging him from the muck, shoving him back into the fight like a craftsman hammering bent metal into shape. The danger grows closer with each heartbeat. Men fall near you, cut down in the frenzy, their blood spattering your boots, their bodies twitching in the mud. A horse bolts past, nearly trampling you, its hooves churning the earth into sludge. You duck and flinch, but you cannot flee. You are bound by duty, by fear, by the simple truth that to run would mean death in a different form. You keep moving, keep carrying, keep obeying, because stopping is not allowed. Your role is not to fight, but it is also not to live safely. It is to exist in the narrow space between, too close to the slaughter to escape it, too lowly to take part in it. When the clash begins to ebb, when one side begins to falter and another begins to cheer, your work changes but does not lessen. Now you drag bodies from the mud, pulling men still breathing as well as those already silent. Their armour is slick with blood, their limbs heavy and awkward, their weight far beyond what your tired muscles should manage. Yet you haul them by the arms, by the belts, by whatever grip you can find, because the field must be cleared, and it is never the night who clears it. You lay them in rows, some groaning, some still. Flies already circling, though the day is not yet done. You do not pause to ask their names. You could not if you tried. The knight rides past, visor raised, basking in applause. He salutes with his sword, mud dripping from its edge, and nods as though victory was his alone. And when the heralds shout the knight's name, when the crowd roars its approval, when banners wave and trumpets blare, you do not raise your head. You're still in the mud, dragging corpses one by one, your body bent, your hands raw, your stomach turning at the weight of death. The knight celebrates, toasting himself and being toasted by others, while you remain unseen. Victory tastes of wine to him. To you, it tastes of blood and dirt pressed between your teeth. When the campaign finally winds down and the banners are lowered, you march back with the rest of the household. The knight rides ahead, bruised but proud, while you trudge behind under the same weight you carried on the road, though no one claps for the return. Villages pass in silence. Peasants bow their heads as your lord rides by, but none spare a glance for the bent boy staggering beneath his lord's possessions. The fields give way to the castle road, and at last the familiar walls rise on the horizon, their smoke and stone greeting you with the same indifference as before. There is no relief in coming home, only a shift in labour. The war may be finished for now, but its burden lingers in every dented plate and stained hauberk that awaits your hands. Armour is the pride of the knight, and your daily torment. Each morning begins with steel. You drag the hauberk of mail into the light, its 1,000 rings rattling like chains, and set to work with vinegar, sand and rag. The stench of rust and sweat rises into your face as you scrub until your arms quiver. Breastplate, greaves, gauntlets, helm. Each piece demands attention, and each punishes you in its own way. The breastplate is too heavy to balance on one knee, so you cradle it in your lap until your thighs bruise. The gauntlets pinch your skin as you tug at straps stiff with grime. The helm leaves your wrists aching as you polish its curves, your reflection ghosting faintly back at you in the steel, a pale face smudged with oil. By the time the knight steps into the hall, gleaming like a relic from heaven, you're already covered in blackened rags, your skin burning with the sting of cuts and vinegar. When the knight prepares to leave the castle, your work shifts from cleaning to assembly. Armour is never donned by the man who wears it. It is fastened piece by piece by the one who serves him. You kneel at his boots, strapping greaves tight until the buckles bite your fingers. You lace sabatons over his shoes, rise to sling the breastplate across his chest, and tug belts into place until your shoulders crack. You adjust his pauldrons, settle the gorget at his neck, and lower the helm over his head while he complains that the padding itches or that the straps pinch. You murmur apologies, adjust again, wipe sweat from his brow, though your own runs unchecked into your eyes. By the time he claps his visor down and declares himself ready, his body encased in 60 pounds of steel, your own limbs already tremble from the weight you've carried for him. The burden does not leave you once he strides away in splendour. Every piece of gear he does not wear is piled onto your back. Spare gauntlets, a second sword, lances, shields, all rattle and grind against your bones as you stagger after him. The mail digs into your collarbones, leaving deep grooves in your skin. The edges of breastplates press into your ribs when you cradle them awkwardly in your arms. Each step clanks, clangs and bruises until you sound like a walking chest of iron. Knights ride ahead on horses that prance proudly in their harness, banners fluttering while you shuffle behind half-crushed beneath their excess. No chronicler writes of the boy doubled over with steel while others ride with their heads high. The smell of armour becomes the air you breathe. Sweat seeps into the padded gambeson, sour and rank. Oil soaks into the straps, greasy and sharp. Rust blooms in damp corners, no matter how much you scour. its acrid tang staining your hands. When you bend close to lift a hauberk, the metallic bite fills your nose and mouth, so thick you can taste it. You smell it still when you lie down at night, as if the iron has seeped into your flesh. No soap can scrub it out. No water can wash it clean. Your body becomes a vessel for the stink of another man's pride. Your skin, a permanent testament to steel that will never shield you. The noise of armour is its own punishment. Each buckle creaks, each plate knocks, each chain rattles, until you cannot tell if the clamour is outside your head or inside it. You carry bundles of gear that jangle like bells, the sound constant and mocking. Even when you rest, the echoes remain, ringing in your skull long after you set the pieces down. At night, you dream of armour clanking, as if it follows you even into sleep. For the night, the noise is a fanfare announcing his entrance. For you, it is the soundtrack of drudgery. Bruises bloom on your body, not only from sparring but from steel. The links of mail bite into your shoulders when you sling it across your back. The rim of a shield slams your thigh as you shift your load. The edge of a helm slices your wrist when you fumble with a strap. Your back aches from lifting. Your knees throb from kneeling. Your hands swell from gripping buckles too tightly for too long. Each day you carry new marks, but no one notices them. The knight shows his wounds as proof of valour. Yours remain hidden, proof only that you have borne weight no one cares to acknowledge. There are moments when the burden threatens to break you, marching for miles with armour piled across your shoulders, sweat pouring into your eyes until the world swims, hauling a breastplate through the courtyard, slipping in mud as the knight strides ahead without looking back, carrying helmets dented in practice to the smith, your arms shaking with each step, the visor cutting into your skin. You stumble, curse under your breath, then lift again, because dropping anything would mean punishment. Armour does not move itself, and knights do not carry their own chains. Even cleaning it is torment. After a day of display or training, the pieces return to you caked in sweat, dirt and blood. You soak them until your fingers wrinkle, scrub until your knuckles split, hammer dents flat until your ears ring. The knight demands they shine as though they were never used, as though your hands can erase the proof of violence from metal. And so you polish until the plates gleam. Even if your skin is raw and blistered, the knight will walk out in steel that looks untouched by labour, but you will carry the scars of keeping it that way. Sometimes you catch yourself imagining what it would feel like to wear the armour properly, to stand inside the steel you have assembled, to feel arrows glance off your chest instead of piercing your skin, to march into the hall with people rising to their feet at the sight of your gleaming frame. You wonder if the weight would crush you, or if, for once, it might hold you upright. But these thoughts are dangerous. You know they are fantasies. Armour belongs to knights. For squires, it is only something to carry, something to clean, something to shoulder until your back bows. It will never belong to you, except as torment. The knight never considers the toll it takes. He sighs with relief when you unbuckle the straps, groans dramatically about the ache in his shoulders, rubs his neck where the padding chafed. You bow your head, murmur sympathy, though your own shoulders are rubbed raw, your own hands swollen and torn. He removes his armour, as though discarding a burden. You are left to haul it away, bent double under the same weight he could not bear for more than a few hours. He complains about pinching. You endure bruises carved into your body every day. At the end of each night, when the last buckle is loosened, the last dent hammered flat, the last stain scrubbed from steel, you stumble to your straw bed. Your arms twitch with phantom weight as though the armour is still piled on them. Your back throbs with dull agony. Your knees stiffen until bending feels impossible. The smell of iron clings to your nostrils. The clank of steel echoes in your ears. The bruises pressed into your skin throb like an unchanging seal. You curl into yourself, too tired even to shift on the straw that scratches your cheek. Sleep comes shallow, filled with the sound of ringing plates and the feel of straps cutting into your hands. The weight of armour presses on your body each day, but the weight of discipline presses deeper. Knights are praised for their discipline, their ability to stand firm in battle and obey the chain of command. For squires, discipline is not praise or virtue. It is the lash that waits behind every mistake, the hand that strikes before you can apologise, the humiliation that lingers longer than any bruise. The stories say a squire learns patience and respect through service, but you discover quickly that patience is just another word for silence, and respect is simply fear dressed in finer clothes. Punishment comes for the smallest failings: a strap forgotten on a greave, a buckle misaligned, a weapon brought too slowly. Each is enough to earn you a cuff across the ear or a fist to the ribs. If your knight is already in a foul mood, the blow is harder, the words sharper, the humiliation deliberate. You learn to anticipate his temper as carefully as you anticipate his commands. Watching the twitch of his jaw, the narrowing of his eyes, the tone of his voice, you scramble faster when you hear anger rising, but often it makes no difference. Sometimes the strike comes simply because he wants to remind you that he can. The sting of punishment is rarely private. More often you're corrected in front of others, other squires, servants, even the knight's peers. A mistake becomes a performance, a chance for your master to show that he tolerates no weakness. You kneel in the dirt while he berates you, or stand stiff while he cuffs you before the watching eyes of those who will repeat the story later, laughing at your expense. The blow itself hurts, but the laughter burns worse. Your cheeks flame, your chest tightens, and you swallow words you dare not speak. The lesson is clear. Your body is not your own, and your pride is worth less than a pair of muddy boots. Sometimes the punishments are crafted less from temper than from method. You're forced to kneel on stone floors until your knees swell, or to hold a shield high until your arms tremble and give out. You are sent to run laps around the courtyard until your legs collapse, only to be kicked upright and told to finish. You are made to stand motionless for hours, silent and stiff, a statue for others to mock. These are called lessons, designed to harden you, to shape you into a man who can endure without question. In truth, they only strip you thinner, sanding away at whatever will you had left, leaving behind the hollow obedience of someone too tired to resist. Worse than the blows or the punishments is the uncertainty. You never know when they will fall. You may do everything right, and still the night strikes you for imagined insolence. You may serve with speed and precision, and still be called slow. You may polish armour until it gleams like a mirror, only to be scolded because he can see his face at the wrong angle. The unpredictability gnaws at you, leaving you taut with anxiety even in stillness. You are never safe, never beyond reach, always bracing for the next lash. Fear becomes your constant companion, heavier than the armour you carry, sharper than the straw that scratches your skin at night. There are times when you're punished not for what you have done, but for what another has failed to do. A mistake in the kitchen, a delay in the stables, an error in the lists. Any of these can be pinned to you if no one else is convenient. You protest once early, and the back of your head strikes stone before you even finish speaking. After that, you learn the futility of explanation. Guilt is not a matter of truth, it is a matter of hierarchy. The knight cannot be wrong, so the squire must be. That law is as immutable as steel. Public humiliation cuts deeper than private blows. You are mocked for tripping, for fumbling, for failing to anticipate commands not yet given. You are made to kneel in the hall while others step around you, the nobles sneering as though you're part of the floor. You are ordered to serve at table with a welt across your cheek, the bruise displayed as proof of your inadequacy. You hear the whispers, the chuckles, the muttered comments about your clumsiness. Each one is a needle driven beneath your skin, harder to heal than any bruise. Pain fades, shame lingers, and yet, for all the cruelty of punishment, dismissal is worse. You know boys who have been sent away, cast out of service for failing too often, or for angering their masters beyond repair. They leave with nothing but the clothes on their backs, no coin, no connections, no future. Without service, you're not a squire. You're just another poor wanderer, one more beggar in a world that already despises the poor. The threat of dismissal hangs heavier than any blow, keeping you bent even when you long to stand straight. You tell yourself that a beating can be endured, but a life of hunger and wandering cannot. You begin to shape your life around fear of failure. You rehearse tasks in your mind before performing them. Double-check buckles, polish armour until your fingers ache. Run before you're called, so you will not be accused of slowness. You listen to every word spoken, even those not meant for you, searching for clues about what will be demanded next. Your entire body becomes an instrument of anticipation, tuned to avoid error. You measure your breaths, your steps, your silences, because any misstep might bring pain. You no longer wonder whether you deserve punishment. You only wonder when it will come. You flinch at sudden sounds, start awake at footsteps in the corridor, brace yourself even in dreams. You run through tasks in your mind, as though rehearsing them might shield you from error. Fear seeps into your bones more thoroughly than cold, and it warms nothing. Over time, you stop questioning the justice of it. Punishment is not about right or wrong, not about fairness, not even about mistakes. It is about power. Knights must show their strength, and you are the nearest object on which to prove it. You stop telling yourself stories of discipline and start telling yourself truths of survival. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not move unless commanded. Do not fail, not even in ways you cannot control. You measure your worth not in honour, but in the absence of blows. If you are not struck today, that is success. If you are not dismissed tomorrow, that is victory. Discipline teaches you silence, and silence teaches you invisibility. You learn to keep your head lowered, your movements quick, your body ready to absorb blows before they land. Yet beyond the bruises, another truth settles in. No matter how much you serve, how hard you labour, how thoroughly you endure, you exist only in the shadow of the night. His name carries weight. His actions are praised. His victories are sung. You, who lace his armour, feed his horse, and sometimes drag his half-conscious body from the mud, are not even an afterthought. The knight is toasted with wine, honoured with verse, and exalted as though he were a creature apart from other men. You are not toasted, not honoured, not exalted. You are tolerated, and only because your absence would cause him inconvenience. It is not only in war or tournaments that this becomes clear. Every day in the hall, you see the difference between your existence and his. He strides in, gleaming in steel that you polished, clad in cloth that you stitched, astride a horse you curried until your arms ached. Nobles rise to greet him, bow to his title, murmur his name with reverence. You stand behind him, holding his sword or adjusting his cloak, and no one meets your eyes. You are not introduced, you are not acknowledged. If you are mentioned at all, it is as the boy who carries his gear, as if you are nothing more than an extension of his belt. Your own name, once spoken often at home, now feels foreign on your tongue. You hear it so rarely that sometimes you wonder if it has already been lost. On the field, the difference is sharper still. When the knight falls, it is your hands that pull him upright. When his horse panics, it is your voice that calms it, your grip that steadies the reins. When his sword snaps, it is your quickness that places another in his palm. You may save his life more than once, though you never speak of it. Others see only the knight rallying, charging again, fighting on. They cheer his resilience, his bravery, his strength. No one records that he would be trampled into the muck if not for the squire who dragged him free, that his sword would be useless if not for the boy who supplied another, that his horse would have bolted if not for the quiet hand at its bridle. His name grows brighter in the telling, while yours sinks further into silence. Chroniclers write as though knights act alone, as though the glitter of their armour emerges by magic, as though their survival is the result of innate valour rather than the unseen labour of those who serve them. You know better, because you are the one polishing the steel until it gleams, sewing the surcoat so it does not hang in tatters, wiping the blood from his brow so he can lift his visor with pride. Yet when the scrolls are inked, when the verses are sung, your part vanishes. At best, a chronicler might mention a squire, nameless, faceless, little more than a shadow clinging to the edge of the tale. If your name appears, it is often mangled or misplaced, buried in a line where no one bothers to linger. The knight's reputation endures. Yours dissolves even as you live it. You're reminded of this constantly, not only by the nobles who praise your master, but by the knight himself. When he wins, he basks in applause, his chest swelling with pride, his laughter booming. When he loses, he rages, striking at you for failing to prepare him properly, as though his fall were the fault of your hands rather than his own. Either way, he fills the story. You are invisible in victory, blamed in defeat. Your existence is a shadow shaped to highlight his figure, to deepen the contrast of his brightness. Without you, he would still be praised. Without him, you would vanish entirely. Sometimes you hear the minstrels sing, their voices carrying tales of valour through the hall. They strum their lutes and chant of knights who ride into danger, who tilt at tournaments, who bleed for their lords and ladies. You listen from the wall, silent, and hear echoes of days you lived, battles you witnessed, tournaments where you bled from hauling his broken body aside. Yet in the songs, there is no boy stumbling in the mud with his armour, no hand dragging him upright, no voice coaxing his horse from panic. The songs emit the shadows. They praise the man who stood in the light, and you who stood just behind are erased. You joke silently that you are not a boy at all, but a phantom, a ghost tethered to a man of flesh, ensuring his life endures while yours slips away unnoticed. The laughter never reaches your lips. You keep it buried, as you bury everything else. The erasure is not simply a matter of pride, it shapes your very sense of being. The more you are ignored, the less you feel real. You move through halls without footsteps, serve at tables without voice, stand behind chairs without form. People speak over you, around you, past you, until you begin to wonder if you exist only for the knight's convenience. If he were to die, would anyone notice you enough to release you from his service, or would you simply wander out of the hall one day, forgotten, fading into the mass of beggars that line the roads? You feel yourself thinning in the shadow, stretched until nothing of you remains but duty. There are moments when you glimpse the truth too sharply to ignore. You see another squire dragging his knight's body from the mud, and you think of how easily one shadow is exchanged for another. You watch a different boy polish armour until his hands split, and you see your own body reflected in his suffering. You realise that there are countless squires, countless shadows, all living the same life, all vanishing from the record. Only the knights remain, their names stacked like stones in the chronicles, each one supported by a pile of forgotten boys who bore their weight. You are not unique, you are not even singular. You are one of many phantoms, ensuring another man's light shines brighter. You try to recall the sound of your mother's voice, the smell of your father's fields, the laughter of a brother or friend. The memories grow fainter with each passing year, replaced by the constant drone of the knight's voice, the constant clang of his armour. You wonder if even your family remembers you, or if you too have become invisible to them. You are not a son, not a boy, not even a servant with a name. You are a shadow, belonging to someone else entirely. For all the silence, for all the punishments, for all the invisibility, there is always the whisper that keeps you moving. Someday, they tell you, you might be knighted. Every boy who bends beneath armour, who scrapes muck from boots, who suffers blows without answer, is promised the same possibility. It is the faint spark dangled in front of you, the reward that justifies the years of drudgery. You are reminded of it when priests preach of loyalty, when knights speak of their own youth, when other squires urge each other on through clenched teeth. Endure, they say, and in time the accolade will be yours. The thought plants itself in your mind, stubborn as a weed pushing through every bruise, every cuff, every humiliation. Perhaps, if you bend low enough now, you may rise one day with sword in hand and spurs on your heels. Yet even as the promise is spoken, you see how rarely it comes to pass. The path to knighthood is narrow, and the road is barred by more than training. Wealth is the true key, and blood the truest key of all. A boy born to noble parents, even if dull of wit and clumsy of hand, will find a way to the accolade. Gold buys armour, and family ties buy recognition. The knight's shoulder is brushed with a sword, and suddenly his name is carved into memory as though the years of service were merely formality. Meanwhile, the poor boys, the ones who serve as you serve, who scrub until their fingers bleed and drag knights from mud at risk of their own lives, wait and wait until the years bleed away. No one calls their names forward. No sword touches their shoulders. They age in service until they are too old to serve, and then they are quietly discarded. You know squires who have served for years, their backs bent, their obedience flawless, their loyalty unquestioned, only to be told at the end that there is no place for them among knights. They are released without ceremony, handed perhaps a few coins, perhaps a threadbare cloak, and nothing else. They vanish into the roads, joining the long line of beggars who haunt the edges of villages, limping and muttering, unwanted by those who once demanded everything from them. No one remembers their service. No one thanks them for their years. The night they served continues on, celebrated, praised, while they wither and fade, their existence never recorded. It is as though they never lived at all. Worse still are those who die before the chance even arrives. Some fall in battle, trampled under horses, or struck by arrows while running water to their knight. Others collapse from fever on campaign, their bodies too starved and worn to fight infection. Sometimes they die of accidents so ordinary they are never mentioned. A fall from a horse, a slip on wet stone, a kick from a startled animal. Their names are not carved anywhere. They are buried in shallow graves, forgotten before the earth has even settled. The knight rides on, his reputation intact, while the boy who served him is lost without a trace. You have seen it happen enough times to know the pattern. Life as a squire is not a ladder leading upward. It is a rope fraying beneath your feet. The promise of knighthood persists, though. Whispered in your ear, like a lie told so often, it begins to sound true. You cling to it some days, when your body is too sore to rise and your spirit too broken to continue. You imagine yourself kneeling, the sword touching your shoulder, the hall watching as you're raised to honour. You imagine shedding your invisibility, walking into the light as a man who commands rather than obeys. You imagine people learning your name, recording it, singing it. The thought is thin as smoke, but smoke still fills your lungs. It keeps you standing when despair would fell you. And yet the evidence of your own eyes gnaws at that fragile hope. You see the divide between those who are knighted and those who are not. The well-born squires are praised for efforts no greater than yours, their mistakes forgiven where yours are punished, their names remembered where yours are ignored. Their fathers or uncles or cousins sit in positions of power. ensuring that when the time comes, the sword descends onto their shoulders. Your father tills fields, your mother bakes bread, your name carries no weight. You begin to realize that all your labor, all your endurance, all your obedience may never be enough to bridge that gap. You serve faithfully, but faithfulness does not polish into gold. The cruelty lies in how the promise is used. Knights speak of knighthood as if it is always waiting, always possible, if only you prove yourself. They dangle it before you when you falter, urging you to endure. They invoke it when punishing you, reminding you that discipline shapes a man worthy of the accolade. They use it as carrot and stick alike, always just out of reach, always just beyond today. And you, desperate for meaning in your servitude, cling to it even when you know better. Without it, what would remain but drudgery, punishment, and silence? At least the promise allows you to dream, even if the dream curdles each time you wake. The other squires talk among themselves, sometimes boasting, sometimes despairing. Each one imagines a different path, a heroic act on the field, a patron who notices their loyalty, a lord who favours them out of pity or respect. You listen, nod, sometimes add your own thin fantasies, though inside you know the truth. You have seen too many boys dismissed, too many buried nameless, too many wanderers limping along the roadside, their eyes hollow. You know that hope is rare and that most of you are bound for obscurity, but still you repeat the words, because silence in this matter feels like surrender. Even if by some twist of fate you were to be knighted, what would it mean? You have seen knights themselves, proud, vain, boastful, cruel. Their honour is a cloak they wear when others are watching. Their courage is often your endurance repackaged as their glory. You wonder if becoming one of them would redeem your years of service, or only make you complicit in the same lies. Yet you cannot let go of the thought entirely. To imagine otherwise is to admit that all your suffering has no reward at all, and that truth is too heavy to bear every day. What remains, then, is a balance between hope and despair. You wake each morning with the promise echoing faintly in your ears, even as your body aches from labour. You strap armour with the thought that perhaps one day someone will strap it for you. You drag your knight from the mud with the fantasy that someday others will cheer your name for the same. You polish steel until your fingers bleed and whisper to yourself that someday a boy will polish yours. The thought is bitter, almost laughable, yet it keeps your hands moving. Hope is not sweet for you. It is bitter, acrid, clinging like smoke in the lungs. But when you strip away the lies, when you look plainly at what you have seen, the truth is undeniable. Most squires do not rise, most are broken, discarded, or forgotten. Their names vanish before they are even grown. Their lives end not with accolade or honour, but with exhaustion, hunger, or the indifferent strike of a disease. You see their faces in your mind, boys who once whispered of knighthood, now lying silent beneath earth or wandering roadsides with hollow eyes. You know, though you do not dare speak it, that your own chances are no greater than theirs. You come to understand the harshest lesson of all. Your life is more likely to end in mud, in hunger, in obscurity, than in the shining glory promised to you. The accolade, if it comes at all, is for others. For you there is only exhaustion and silence. Whatever dreams you once held, whatever hopes you once nurtured, fade into the same truth. You will not be remembered as a knight. You will not be remembered at all. Years of service end, one way or another. They do not end with ceremony, nor with thanks. They do not end with the grand culmination you once imagined as a boy, when you were told that enduring hardship might one day earn you the accolade of knighthood. They end the way they always have, for boys like you, quietly, with little notice, and often without choice. Sometimes they end when your body gives out before your youth does, fever burning you from the inside until you're carried into the earth. Sometimes they end when the night tires of you, deciding you're too slow, too clumsy, too old to keep pace, and dismisses you into poverty without coin or place. And sometimes they end simply because the years have passed, because you have bent your back long enough, because there is no longer any need for a servant who has grown too worn to bend quickly. Service ends, but the labour of it lingers in your bones until even standing feels like work. The knight's life continues as yours diminishes. He strides into halls where lords raise goblets in his honour, where minstrels sing of his victories, where priests commend him as a man of discipline and valour. His name carries weight, inscribed in ledgers, spoken at feasts, carried on banners. You watch from the margins, as you always have, holding his cloak, pouring his wine, fetching his sword. It is his deeds that are remembered, though you know how many of them were preserved by your hands. You recall the times you dragged him upright when he would have been trampled, the times you forced water past his lips when he lay half conscious, the times you stitched his flesh and mended his armour until he could stand again. You know that without you, he might have been a corpse left behind on the field. But when the stories are told, your hands vanish. His survival becomes his triumph, your labour transformed into his glory. Even the smallest gestures of recognition never reach you. When armour gleams, the chronicler writes of the knight's magnificence, not the boy who scrubbed rust and blood until his fingers split. When the horse prances proudly in the lists, the poet sings of the knight's noble steed, not the boy who shovelled manure and brushed its flanks until it gleamed. When wounds heal, they are spoken of as evidence of his endurance, not of the cloths you pressed against bleeding flesh. Everything you do is absorbed into him, leaving nothing of you behind. You are a vessel poured into another man's reputation, emptied until you are hollow. Time blurs. Years fold one upon another until you are no longer sure how long you have served. The boy who once dreamed of knighthood becomes the man who simply endures, his back bent, his silence perfected. You watch new squires arrive, their faces pale with fear or flushed with pride, and you see in them your own beginnings. They are told the same promises, given the same faint spark of hope, and you know already how their lives will turn. Some will be dismissed, some will die, some will fade into the same invisibility you inhabit now. You want to tell them the truth, to spare them the years of waiting, but the words die in your throat. You have learned too well that silence is survival. The knight grows older, but his reputation does not dim. If anything, it shines brighter with each retelling, polished by time into something greater than it ever was. Deeds that were clumsy become noble. Defeats are softened into near victories. Victories inflated into legend. The men who fought beside him embellish. The chroniclers exaggerate. The poets invent, until the man you serve and the man sung in verse are scarcely the same, but both are remembered, both endure. His name is carried forward, etched into the memory of lords and priests, entered into dusty ledgers that will sit in monasteries long after you are gone. Your name is not etched anywhere. You remain only as a shadow in the background, unrecorded, unnoticed, unnecessary. Perhaps you're fortunate enough not to be dismissed, fortunate enough not to die young. Perhaps you simply grow older in his service, your hair greying, your body slowing, your knees stiffening each time you kneel to buckle his greaves. Even then, no recognition comes. You are spoken of less and less, treated more and more as furniture, until you're barely noticed at all. And when you're finally gone, carried out by fever, or hunger, or quiet dismissal, nothing changes. The night continues. His story continues. His memory continues. Yours ends the moment your body fails. At best, you might be recorded in some dusty ledger, your name inked in a margin as the servant of a man who mattered. A clerk may scratch it down incorrectly, The letters jumbled, the details wrong. Squire to Sir So-and-so, a faint footnote at the bottom of a page no one reads. That is the height of your memorial, a misspelled name, a record so faint that it may be scraped off the parchment and replaced when the page is needed for something more important. The knight's deeds will fill entire pages. Your existence will barely take a line, and most often, even that line never comes. Your name dissolves before it can be written, your body buried without stone, your years swallowed by silence. The knight may be praised in verse, his victories carved into chronicles, his family honoured for generations, while you vanish entirely. The hall will not speak of you, the chronicler will not recall you, the poet will not sing of you. The boy who once dreamed of knighthood, who bent beneath armour, who suffered punishment, who endured silence, will simply cease. The shadow will fade, and no one will notice its absence. You think sometimes of all the squires who came before you, who bent and broke beneath the same weight. Their faces are gone, their names forgotten, their lives erased, and yet without them, none of these knights would have endured. Entire generations of boys fed the flame of other men's glory, their own lives consumed and extinguished without so much as a whisper. You are part of that long line, one more body folded into the shadows, one more life offered up to sustain another's reputation. You understand now that this was always the truth, that the promise of knighthood was never meant for you, that the stories of service leading to honour were crafted to keep boys silent while their years were consumed. Your service ends as it began, without choice, without ceremony, without recognition. You have carried another man's gear, patched his wounds, polished his armour, calmed his horses, absorbed his blows. You have been beaten into obedience, bent into silence, shaped into invisibility. The knight rides on in memory, his name fixed in ink, his image bright in verse. You fade entirely, your existence erased, a servant to glory that was never your own. And that brings us to the end of tonight's slow descent into the life of a medieval squire. A world where glory was promised but never given, where bruises stood in for lessons, and where your name dissolved quietly into someone else's reputation. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.